listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Marie Murphy. I'm a relationship coach, and I specialize in helping people who are engaging in something they think counts as infidelity deal with their feelings, clarify what they want, and make decisions about what they're going to do. No shame, no blame, no judgments. So if you're in a situation like that and you'd like some help sorting it out, let's work together. You can schedule an introductory coaching session with me through my website, mariemurphyphd.com. I look forward to working with you. All right. Today we are going to talk about money and how fears about money can sometimes get in the way of thinking clearly about what you want in your love life and making decisions about your love life. So a lot of times when I'm working with clients who are cheating on their partners and are trying to figure out what they want to do, the fear of financial changes looms large. And this applies to people who are married and to people who are in committed relationships but aren't officially married. There can be plenty of financial implications of ending a committed relationship, even if it isn't legally a marriage. But for the sake of keeping my language a little simpler here, I'm going to use the terms marriage and divorce frequently during this episode. But in doing so, I want you to know that I am also talking about non-married partners and the consequences of ending their relationships. So here's a common scenario. My client is married and they've been having an affair, or they were cheating on their spouse, but now they aren't. And they're trying to figure out what it all means. And sometimes the client thinks that they very well might want to leave their marriage because they don't want to continue a romantic partnership with their spouse. And sometimes they're pretty sure of this. Sometimes they're pretty sure they don't want to stay married to their spouse, but they can't quite seem to bring themselves to take any action because they have all of these fears about what might happen if they get divorced. And sometimes these fears even prevent people from getting to the point of recognizing what they really want out of their relationship situations. And often one of the biggest fears that people have is money, and fears about the financial changes they assume will come if they get divorced or end their relationship. And pretty often, clients will tell me something like this. They'll say, I can't get divorced because it will be too expensive. Or I can't get divorced because it will financially ruin me. Or I can't get divorced because I won't be able to have the same comfortable life I have now. Or I can't get divorced because I'll have to give up so much of what I've worked so hard for. Or I can't get divorced because then I'll have to go out and get a job and I haven't worked for a long time, however many years. Or I can't get divorced because we'll have to sell the house. Or I can't get divorced because if I did, I would have to live in a really small apartment. This is just a short list of things people tell me will happen if they get divorced, but you get the idea. The point is that people often think that getting divorced will mean that their financial situation will change in ways that they don't like the idea of one bit. And there are a number of things we can say about this. The first one I want to suggest is that when we're engaging and thinking about worst case scenarios, when we're imagining the catastrophes that might befall us, we're not actually problem solving. You might think you are, but what you're actually doing is distracting yourself from the question you need to address, which is the question of whether or not you want to stay married to your spouse. The question of, do I like the idea of the financial changes I imagine my divorce will entail, is not the same question as, do I want to stay in a romantic partnership with my spouse? Now, you could decide that the question of whether or not you want to stay in a romantic partnership with your spouse hinges upon the question of whether or not you like the idea of the financial changes that might come with your divorce. You could consciously come to the conclusion that that's the way it's going to be for you. But number one, you might not want to do that for reasons I will articulate in this episode. And number two, the problem I see so often is that people let their fears about divorce, whether they're financial fears or other fears, stop them in their tracks. They get so obsessed with the idea of how financially ruinous their divorce will be that they don't allow themselves to seriously consider the question of whether or not they want to stay married. And in my opinion, that is a question that is well worth your serious consideration. So when fears come up that prevent you from seriously considering that question, the solution is to take those fears head on and investigate them instead of allowing them to become ongoing distractions or long-term excuses for not getting clear about whether you want to stay married to your spouse or not. Now, I want to make it absolutely clear that you are allowed to have whatever concerns or worries or fears or questions you have about money. Why wouldn't you have concerns about money? In our society, money matters in some pretty key ways. But even more importantly, in my opinion, is that in our society, we make money mean a lot of things. Money may be valuable as a medium of exchange, but we make it far more meaningful and far more valuable by how we think about it and through the significance we accord it. And one of our most basic shared assumptions about money is that it's good to have more of it, or it's good to have a lot of it, and it's bad to have less of it or to not have much of it, right? And so many of us buy into these ideas without really questioning them or without thinking about what these ideas specifically mean for us in our lives. So I want to put it out there that concerns about money are common and normal and to be expected. And it is much more effective just to acknowledge our concerns about money and to take them on, which may not be easy per se, but it is doable. It's much more effective to do these things than to try and ignore our concerns about money or try and pretend that we aren't really all that worried about money, or to try and pretend that our concerns about money are unsolvable or unresolvable. Many of us have a rather strange or perhaps even dysfunctional relationship with money. We may not be very conscious of what we believe to be true about money. We may not have a clear understanding of what money can do for us and what it can't do for us. So, for instance, many people tell me that money gives them security. And then when I ask them what security means to them, they don't really know, but they're pretty sure that having money is what makes them feel secure. Or I ask them how much money they need to feel secure, and they tell me that they don't know, but they're sure that they don't want to have any less money than they currently have because they're sure that that would make them feel insecure. And I'm not saying this to criticize anyone, not at all. There are so many crazy and contradictory ideas about money and what it means and what it can and it can't do for us out there. And we can all be forgiven for having some beliefs about money that don't necessarily make much sense and don't necessarily help us get more of what we want to out of life. And just to be clear, I am not suggesting that money doesn't matter or that money isn't useful or that money isn't important. I absolutely think that money matters and it's useful and it's important, but not necessarily in the ways we think it does or think it is. So by this point, you may be wondering, well, what does all of this have to do with infidelity anyway? Here's my answer. In some ways, money doesn't have anything to do with infidelity. And that's kind of the whole point. So much of what goes into our experiences of infidelity isn't about the infidelity itself. It's about other pieces of our lives and the bearing we think those other pieces of our lives have upon our infidelity situation or our relationship choices. And of course, money in our current historical moment has some bearing on just about every aspect of our lives. And it may have a big impact on how we think about our relationship choices. We may not be able to change the fact that money is omnipresent, but we can change the way we think about it. And when we get our beliefs about money in good working order, we're better able to be faithful to our deepest desires about how we want to live our lives without being thwarted by limiting beliefs about money. So that's what this has to do with infidelity. So to that end, here are two things I want you to consider. Number one, what do you get from money or from having money or having a certain amount of money? And number two, is it possible that sometimes it's worth it to have less money? And why might that be the case? So let's start with the first question. What do you get from money? Now, again, I will acknowledge that money is the primary medium of exchange in our world today. And there are a lot of things that we can get with money or from money. And we absolutely need some of those things. We need food and water and shelter in order to survive. But here's where it starts to get interesting. We can get food and water and shelter without having money of our own. When we don't have food, there are people out there who will feed us. Or if there aren't, we can forage in the woods. Now, you might not typically consider those options. They may sound absurd to you, but they are options that may actually be available to you. And I mention them not to suggest that foraging for our food is necessarily an option that makes the most sense for each of us as individuals if we are short on funds, but I mention it to illustrate the limits of our typical thinking. Similarly, when we don't have a home, there are people out there who will let us sleep on their couch or in their spare bedroom or in their unused mansion. There are people who will gladly take us out to dinner or buy us groceries or offer us food from a food bank. If we can't pay our mortgage or our rent, there are laws in place that prevent us from being immediately evicted and that kind of thing. Now, this is not a comment on the strength of our social safety nets, mind you. That's a whole nother story. I'm not going to comment on that here. But the point I am trying to get across is that it's really important to get very clear about exactly what we believe to be true about money. Sometimes we think that our survival might literally be at stake if we didn't have a certain amount of money, but that may not be as true as we think it is. That might not be exactly true. And it's really it's really important to get clear on what we're thinking and be precise about what we're thinking and get clear on whether or not it's accurate, because we may be telling ourselves things that are fueling our fears about money. It's our beliefs about money that create our fears about money or alleviate our fears about money. It's not the amount of money that we have or don't have that creates or alleviates our fears about money. Now, of course, for a lot of people, fears about money aren't about survival in the literal sense, but they are about, having less money or about having less of some of the things that money can buy. So I want you to get really clear on what you personally get from money. What actual things do you get or have access to? What do you think about having those things or having access to those things? What does having the money you have enable you to do that you wouldn't be able to do without that money? Whatever these things are is great. The point is just to be clear about what they are. And it's also important to be clear about what we think about having these things. Like, let's say, you like to go to the spa every week or go to get box seats at the ball game every week or whatever it is you like to do with your money. And then after that, you go out to a nice dinner and you spend however many hundreds of dollars on nice food and wine and that kind of thing. Let's say that is really important to you. Great. What do you get out of it specifically? What does it mean about you or for you that you're able to do those things or have those things? Get clear on your beliefs about money and what you're getting from having money. And by extension, I also want you to start to get clear on what you don't get from money or what you can't get from money. Now, a lot of people tell me that it isn't money that's important to them, but it's what money enables them to do. And of course, I understand what they're getting at when people say this. But here's the thing. Let's say you like really nice food and really nice hotels and traveling first class to far off destinations. All that stuff is great. And there's nothing wrong with liking that stuff or wanting that stuff. But the question is, what makes you enjoy those things? You can go on expensive vacations and stay in the best hotels and eat in the best restaurants and have the best experiences and swim with dolphins or jump out of airplanes or whatever it is you like to do. But what creates the enjoyment? Consider this. If you are miserable in your marriage and trapped in a life, feeling trapped, I should say, in a life you aren't enjoying, all the champagne and caviar in the world isn't going to relieve you of feeling trapped or feeling miserable. If you want to be drinking champagne and eating caviar with your affair partner instead of your spouse, having another glass of champagne is not going to fix that problem, even if it is great champagne. Jumping out of another airplane is not going to fix that problem either. These activities might provide temporary distraction. And yes, your participation in these activities may have been enabled by money. But if you aren't experiencing what you really want to experience, does it matter how much caviar you can afford? You can live in a nice big house and be deeply unhappy. You can have more money than you know what to do with and be totally dissatisfied with your life. Or maybe that's not quite your situation. Gosh, I'm really stumbling over my words today. Pardon me. Maybe your situation is that you don't have more money than you know what to do with, but you can't imagine shaking up your financial status quo because you think you have finally achieved a state of financial security and you're scared of losing that. So I raised this question earlier. What does security mean? What does it mean to you? I want you to consider the possibility that security is a state of mind that is not a function of however much money you have or don't have. We can have a lot of money and feel very insecure. We can have very little money and feel just fine. I know there are plenty of messages out there that tell you that financial security is a measurable, verifiable thing, but I beg to differ. Having a certain amount of money or wealth or investments are verifiable things. The numbers are real. I'm not arguing that math exists and dollars and cents exist or whatever currency you're working with doesn't exist. But having these things, having a certain amount of money in the bank or not having a certain amount of money at your disposal is not what causes you to feel secure or insecure. So if you're worrying about divorce and what it might mean for you and your money or you and your financial situation, I want to encourage you to rigorously investigate your beliefs about money. Do the math stuff. Of course, all of that is important. Get clear on the numbers. A lot of times people freak out about the possible financial implications of their divorce before they have a clear sense of what those numbers look like in any concrete terms. And that's a problem that can be addressed. And in addition to doing the math stuff, it is just as important to get clear on what you believe is true about money, no matter how much of it you have, and investigating whether those beliefs are helping you live the life you want to live or not. Okay, now for my second question. Is it possible that sometimes it's worth it to have less money? And why, or worth it to have less money temporarily, we should say. Money is a renewable resource. And why might it be the case that it's worth it to have less money for now or for a little while or for, maybe a long time? Who knows? Let's say you would rather not have less money than you currently have, or you would rather not move out of your large and comfortable house and into a smaller dwelling. Let's say you're clear on what money gets you and why you appreciate it. And you would prefer not to give up or cut back on having any of those things. And if that's the case for you, that is fair enough. You are allowed to want what you want and to prefer whatever you prefer in life. And if you like having a certain amount of money or having certain things that only money can get you, that is totally legitimate. If that is your situation, I want you to consider whether there might be any reasons to willingly have less money or less of the things money can buy, or to give up your house and move to a smaller dwelling or whatever. And the answer to that question does not have to be yes. But I do want to suggest that although there are a lot of things money can do for us, there are also a lot of things that it can't. And this might sound trite, But again, I am not saying that money doesn't matter. It absolutely does, but sometimes other things might matter more. So for instance, let's say you really want to experience life outside of your current marriage. You really want to get out of that romantic partnership, out of that legal relationship for all kinds of reasons. Maybe it's for the sake of being free to be in a relationship with your affair partner. Or maybe it's for the sake of being free to do whatever you want, either within or outside of your love life. And let's say that you've carefully considered why you don't want to be married to your spouse anymore, and you really like your reasons. But then, whenever you think about the financial implications of getting divorced, you start to retreat. You start to think that maybe your marriage isn't so bad after all. Maybe divorce is a bad idea. Maybe you can make it work. Maybe you just need to reset your expectations. In other words, you start to let your financial concerns run the show and be the loudest voice in the discussion. Here's the deal. You can choose to stay in your marriage because you prefer to keep your financial situation the way it is. You might decide that it isn't worth it to you to move out of your big, gorgeous house that you love, even if it means you also stay in a marriage that you would like to leave. There is no such thing as an objectively right or wrong choice in this regard. And my only agenda is to help you get really clear about what you believe about money and what it can and can't do for you, so that your beliefs about money don't interfere or overwhelm your choices about your relationships. Now, this is something that I say often on the podcast, and it's really important here. If you are considering divorce or considering divorce, it's important to remember that no matter what you choose to do, there will be some discomfort involved. Discomfort is an inevitable part of the human experience. Often, the only choice we really have in any situation is the choice between familiar discomfort and unfamiliar discomfort. Do you prefer to stay in the familiar discomfort of your current marriage and your current financial situation? Or do you prefer the discomfort of making changes that may be disruptive, but would also open up new possibilities for you? Each scenario has a different set of opportunities and challenges, but there's no way to avoid the discomfort or the challenges completely. However, I often see folks attempting to do exactly that. I see people staying in limbo because they're hoping for an easy or significantly easier option to just present itself. And I totally get it. I am so sympathetic to this. I have done this too, and it's a totally human thing to want an easier option to just arise. But here's the deal, people. It may never come, ever. And moreover, it is much more efficient and effective and empowering to change your orientation to your situation instead of waiting for your situation to change. When you are willing to examine what you think about your relationships and your money and decide what you want to experience in your life and be willing to make clear choices, you will get yourself out of limbo and be able to experience new things. If change is what you want, I don't recommend waiting for it to occur. There may be times in your life where you have to give up some things in order to get more of what is more important to you, or perhaps temporarily have less of some things in order to have more of other things. And this does not have to be a problem at all. Sometimes letting go of something or letting go of some things is the best thing we can possibly do for ourselves. And in some situations, giving up some of our money or some of the things that money can buy opens up options to us that are worth even more to us than money. And that might mean getting to have an above board relationship with your affair partner. That might mean living a life in which you're allowed to pursue other options that aren't available to you within your current marriage. It might mean feeling more free and more excited about your life and more authentic. It might mean having opportunities to cultivate a wealthier, more abundant experience of your life in ways that don't have anything to do with money. There are many kinds of abundance. Abundance of good feelings, abundance of possibilities, abundance of friends, abundance of lovers, abundance of pleasure. and so on. Now, I am not suggesting for a second that financial abundance and other kinds of abundance are mutually exclusive. Not at all. And in fact, when we create abundance in all areas of our lives, it's often easier to create more financial abundance than it is when we're unhappy or not in touch with our true desires or are otherwise stuck. But when we prioritize financial wealth over all other kinds of wealth or abundance, we sometimes forfeit the opportunity to experience things that may be even more valuable than money. Money is great, but other things are great too. All right, everyone. If financial concerns are holding you back from even considering divorce, I want you to recognize that if it's going on. These kinds of fears can prevent you from seriously considering what you want to do about your relationship or relationships, but they do not have to. These fears don't have to stop you in your tracks. It is possible to address your concerns about money in a way that makes them less scary and more manageable. And this will help you think clearly about what you really want to do with your love life and make decisions that are truly right for you. And if you would like my help with this or my help with any other aspect of your infidelity situation, let's talk. You can schedule an introductory coaching session with me through my website, mariemurphyphd.com. I offer compassionate, confidential coaching via Zoom so we can work together no matter where you are located. I look forward to speaking with you. All right, that's it for today, folks. If you have enjoyed what you've heard, I hope you will head on over to iTunes to rate and review the show. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.